All right, gang, here we are. Here we go. It's 12:05. Good afternoon, may I be the first to say. It's Tuesday, April 4. You probably knew that. It's 2023. I certainly hope you knew that. It's our episode 312 on the Matt Murphy Show. Our portion of the broadcast day begins right now, ceases at about 3 o'clock this afternoon. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You're welcome to listen for all 3 hours on the radio. You can also join us on Super Talk TV. That would be on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. I don't know why you would want to watch me do radio, but God bless you for doing so. Every so often I look, and there's sometimes hundreds of you on the various platforms watching us do our thing. This thing's broken. Has anybody noticed that this thing's broken? Mine's broken. It's broken. You know why? Because this is what we do with it every day. We grab it, and we move it here, and we move it there. This is. I mean, look, it's broken. I told you.
Dan thinks he's Freddie Mercury with the mic.
He does grab it a lot, doesn't he? I mean, I know I do mine too, but, you know. There you go. So, pardon me, I was complaining about my little. I need Mike Viagra. I shall be calling the Tennessee Men's Clinic ASAP for a revitalization of this microphone. We have 3 hours together, as I mentioned. You're invited to be a part of that via the telephones and via the super text line, 615-737-9986. That's the way to do that, 615-737-9986. It's going to be a kind of walking commentary sort of day as we are anticipating. I mean, obviously, we get a lot of stuff to talk about in Tennessee. There was chaos last night in the House of Representatives. You well know that. Now, Cameron Sexton, I saw Cameron earlier today and spoke with his spokesperson. I know that the Speaker of the House will be on with Brian Wilson this afternoon. He is normally slated to be on our show. We have him slotted in on Fridays. And I don't want to get in front of Brian because I think he normally has him on Tuesdays, or I don't know if that's a standing appointment. But one way or the other, you can hear directly from the Speaker's mouth what he saw from the well on the floor of the House of Representatives this afternoon. I want to say at 4:35, if I'm not mistaken. We will speak to this, and we have a call out to William Lamberth, the House Majority Leader, who was all in the mix. He tried to engage some of the protesters yesterday to no avail because they don't want to have conversations with you. We'll discuss that as the show unfolds and as time allows. We have a little new information about the motivations behind the Covenant School shooting. We will discuss that as well. But right now, we are all on pins and needles as we anticipate that the former president of the United States of America, the 45th president of the United States of America, Donald Trump, will be leaving his tower in New York City to head on down to the courthouse to get arraigned. We're being told that they are denying Donald Trump a mugshot. I was talking with Ken Weaver about this, that apparently they're not handcuffing him because the Secret Service, even if they wanted to, the Secret Service says no. You're not going to handcuff a former president of the United States of America publicly because that is a high security risk. And our job is to protect the former president of the United States regardless of whatever else is going on, and you're not doing that. Although I would have loved to have seen that as well. Look at these handcuffs. They're beautiful. They're the best. They're gold. They're the finest handcuffs ever made. They said it couldn't be done. We did it anyway.
You remember when the Iraqis would vote and they would come out with the ink on their finger?
Mm-hmm.
That's what Trump should do. Don't wash his hands afterwards.
Yeah.
Just come out with the ink on his hands.
Oh, that'd be great. He's got to have something. But now we're being told that there'll be no mugshot either. They're not giving him a mugshot opportunity, obviously understanding that people recognize the partisan nature of this political persecution and prosecution, and the people have responded in kind to the DA, Alvin Bragg, who's making up these trumped-up charges, no pun intended. If this judge had any conscience whatsoever, once requested, he would throw out this case. There is no case. However, we don't anticipate that will happen in Manhattan now, do we? You know, we've joked about it because it's such a ridiculous process they're going through in New York City. I suppose we ought to be a little more serious with the matter. Inasmuch as this has never been done before, and inasmuch as it wasn't that long ago when even in the midst of the ultimate blood sport that is politics, we could step back and recognize the damage that could be done to our basic institutions in the United States of America as a result of playing partisan politics with the judicial system. Gerald Ford understood that. And prior to Richard Nixon facing any sort of criminal charges, he pardoned the former president. I do not believe that these charges have any merit whatsoever, and we can walk through what Donald Trump's being accused of. As we speak, the president is now en route, a.k.a. route. He's en route to his arraignment at the New York City courthouse right now. There is a helicopter. I mean, it is, as you might expect, a locked-down situation. It's also something of a dog and pony show. I mean, I'm looking at an overhead. I think it's a helicopter shot. No, it wouldn't be a drone that high. Yeah, a helicopter shot of the motorcade with Donald Trump en route to his arraignment at the New York City courthouse right now. And there's literally, I mean, maybe it's just your standard folks walking about on the sidewalks, but it looked like almost a parade line there for a minute just outside of Trump Tower as he's headed over to the arraignment. So, look, there it is, the arrest and the arraignment of Donald Trump, something that the mainstream media is playing up as a celebration of American justice, something that we recognize is a travesty of American justice, and it's playing out before our very eyes. We'll continue to comment on it, to take your thoughts on it, as well as offer you a play-by-play of the goings-on if you're at work or whatnot, away from a television camera or away from a computer monitor. Just stick right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We will we'll attempt to give you the lay of the land. There's my goodness, hold on, let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I've got, by my count, it is a 10-car motorcade. Could be more. Might not have seen some of the last cars moving through. But that motorcade weaving their way through the streets of New York, obviously blocking off. They have an ambulance. I say that incorrectly on purpose. There's an ambulance. Why is there an ambulance?
Now, traditionally, some of those are decoy cars intentionally, right?
Yes, of the two larger SUVs. Now, this is typical for a sitting president of the United States. I don't know that normally you would do this for an ex-president of the United States, but given the nature of this, yes. So one of the SUVs would be the actual, and one of the SUVs would be a dummy. I saw that with my own eyes. When Donald Trump toured Smith Station, Alabama, there was a tornado or a series of tornadoes that went through Alabama several years ago while, obviously, Donald Trump was president of the United States. He and Melania Trump came down to Smith Station to tour some of the devastation. We were posted up fairly close by, and we watched the motorcade go by. And I saw, it's pretty cool, because you see the president, but you don't know which is which, and they switch. Like they're, one moment the president might be the lead limo.
Oh, so they're weaving in.
Yeah, they're switching as they go, I think on purpose, obviously, to make sure that they're not monitored and people don't figure it out. But, I saw that with the own eyes. So who knows where they're headed now. They look to be going out to a port somewhere. That looks like the Eisenhower Expressway. What the hell are they doing on the Eisenhower Expressway? Why am I giving you traffic commentary about Manhattan, New York City? I don't know. So anyway, we'll continue to monitor that. Protesters are already getting a little bit physical. Have you seen? I put this up on social media. It is a physical manifestation. Go to my website or go to my Twitter feed at Matt Murphy Show. At Matt Murphy Show. Follow me there. You'll love it. I'm pithy as the day is long, and as the day goes on, my comments get a little more raw. That might be the bourbon talking.
Bud Light.
Pardon me, Bud Light talking. Bud Light talking. Hi, I'm working on my Dylan Mulvaney impersonation. More on that coming up. Kid Rock has a thought or two that we'll share with you. So they have the Trump supporters outside of the courthouse separated from the anti-Trump folk. And apparently, according to Fox News, a woman wearing a Make America Great Again hat fell to the ground after trampling an anti-Trump flag strewn on the ground near the New York City courthouse where the former president is going to be arraigned in mere moments. According to the photos in the chaotic scene, the Trump supporter ran across and grabbed a large banner with the words, "Trump lies all the time" on it. She then fell onto the ground and lay down on the flag before she was confronted by protesters wearing shirts calling for the arrest of the former president. The scuffles between Trump supporters and protesters came up ahead of, obviously, his highly anticipated arrival at the court. Understand that this is something that the political left has been anticipating not really since Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015. In the summer of 2015, Donald Trump was looked at as a side amusement. He was a carnival show to many in the mainstream media because they believed that they controlled the narrative to the point that they could dictate to you who was a viable candidate and who was not, who was an acceptable candidate for the Republican Party and who was not. And ultimately, they were shown just how much influence they had, at least in the 2016 election cycle. They decided then and there a couple of things. One, that they would make darn sure that they controlled the narrative better in 2020, and they did so, mostly through COVID-19. Some conspiracy theorists would suggest to you that those two things are connected. I don't know that I would go that far. That said, it was not until Donald Trump became the nominee, and really not until he dispatched of Hillary Clinton, something that the mainstream press never thought would happen, that they determined that he was an individual that they must destroy. Regardless of where the truth takes them, regardless of what the truth might be, the narrative was the most important thing. And every story that came out of Donald Trump's presidency, out of CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, New York Times, Washington Post, on and on and on it goes. Each story that had anything to do with presidential politics was filtered through one lens. And that lens was and is this good or bad for Donald Trump? If it is good for Trump, we do not highlight. As a matter of fact, we actively spike the story. If it is bad for Trump, we turn this bad boy up to an 11 and let's rock and roll. That is the narrative lens that everything from a presidential political perspective was viewed from 2016 until this moment, today. And I've long said, and it's a reference to the movie Spinal Tap. If you've seen the movie, you absolutely get the reference. If you've not, I think you'll figure it out. If everything's an 11, nothing can be an 11. If everything is the worst thing ever, then nothing is the worst thing ever. Does that make sense to everyone? There's the great scene in This Is Spinal Tap where he's showing him the amp. And he tells him, well, my amp goes up to 11 because, more power. And he says, well, why don't you just make the amp loud? Why don't you just make 10 louder? And Christopher Guest, who's playing Nigel, I think it is, just looks at him flummoxed at Rob Reiner and says,
completely confused. Like, I don't understand.
No, this one is an 11. Well, when the mainstream media saw that Donald Trump was going to be the president of the United States, everything went to an 11. A little bit before the election happened because the Billy Bush tape came out, and they've long believed that everything that comes before them having to do with Donald Trump will be the thing that destroys Donald Trump, and none of it ever works. The Stormy Daniels allegation was going to be the thing that prevented Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States. It didn't work. The Billy Bush tape where Donald Trump was talking bawdy locker room talk with Billy Bush, it didn't work. Oh, the Russian collusion piece didn't work. 2.5-year investigation didn't work. Ukrainian telephone call didn't work. None of this amounts to a hill of beans. Michael Cohen didn't. I could go on and on. But everything's an 11. And every time it happens, so many liberals in this country believe that this is the time they're going to get him. We're going to see him in chains. And now, congratulations, liberals. You're getting your wish. This is the Obi-Wan Kenobi moment. If no one in talk radio circles has made this comparison, would my Murphy minions out there in the listening audience go ahead and throw me credit on this? Remember when Darth Vader finally confronted his old mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi? And remember what Obi-Wan Kenobi told him. In my pretty obvious analogy, the mainstream media is Darth Vader. Donald Trump is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he tells them, if you strike me down now, I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And they can't help themselves. If there's any reason why he's not getting a mugshot, it's because they truly know this. They truly understand that this is only going to foment the resources of Donald Trump supporters. It is going to galvanize those who are already in Camp Trump and remind those of us who have concerns about the second bite at the apple from Trump, and I have my own concerns, but it reminds us of what he does to drive the left and the deep state and the deep swamp so madly insane, and why that is ultimately good for the United States of America. Six 615-737-9986. 615-737-9986. I'm being told that Brian Wilson played that clip last week. On today's episode of Matt's Movie References, we go through Spinal Tap and we recycle Brian Wilson's Star Wars reference from last week. Well, great minds think alike, and so do Wilson and I. We'll be back at 12:22 on Super Talk.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. I've been teaching investing on Nashville airwaves for over 20 years with the Investor Coaching Show. And in that time, I taught a lot about how markets work and how we invest money and academic principles of investing money. But I've also talked an awful lot about how to avoid the mistakes that people often make with their money. Think about it. A lot of people sold out of the market at the worst time when COVID struck, or when TARP happened, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or gold, they invested in that at the worst time. Bailing out of the market because they were worried about Y2K or 9/11, or jumping into energy stocks, or jumping into cryptocurrency. One of the things that I like to do is educate investors, because I believe that the more educated you are, the more confident you are, and the more confident you are, the more successful you can be as an investor. Now, I not only do that on our radio show, but we do that in our offices around the Nashville region, 10 offices. To learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
Supertalk 99.7 WTN. We continue to watch as coverage of the arrest and arraignment of the President of the United States dominates 24-hour news networks. Donald Trump is being officially classified as under arrest right now as he has arrived at the courthouse. He's awaiting arraignment. As soon as he arrives at the courthouse, he is technically under arrest. And so with much glee in their voices, some of the leftist mainstream networks are reporting that as we speak. We'll get your thoughts and commentary. And I mean, they've been waiting for this for a long time now, haven't they? So you know what? Enjoy your moment in the sun as this will amount to nothing, and it will demonstrate more than anything the partisan nature of the mainstream media and the partisan nature of the judicial system, at least as it exists in Manhattan, and we certainly know beyond. 615-737-9986. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on all of this. In the meantime, closer to home, we've got last night in the House of Representatives to go over, and we will, never you fear. Got plenty of time on that for your thoughts and comments. Yes, absolutely yes. Gloria and the two Justins, Justin Pearson and Justin Jones, one of Memphis, the other of Nashville. Of course, Gloria Johnson is out of Knoxville. These are three Democrat rabble-rousers that chose to ignore and flaunt the rules of the House of Representatives to the point that they've already had many of their privileges. Did you see where Gloria Johnson was complaining she couldn't get into the building to get her scooter?
Like her bird scooter?
Like her mobility scooter.
She a big woman or something?
I mean, she's a large lady. She's big in the hip. But, I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just throwing it out there. She apparently said that she needed it for weekend activities, and she's really not telling us what those were, some event down in the city. And she was unable to retrieve it from her office because her card key didn't work. Bunch of babies.
Seems like if it's that important, you'd have a backup.
Or if it was that important, you would call Democrat leadership. Or if it was that important, you would call the state troopers who would let you in the facility. Or if it was that important, you would call one of your colleagues to allow you in the facility. None of which Gloria Johnson chose to do.
Would not try to start a riot to begin with.
Or you would maybe not try to start a riot on the floor of the House of Representatives, and you would not have your privileges and your access card key revoked. Maybe that's a good plan. Good point, Bell. So we have that to get into as well. But first, this, and I'll get into some of the details. Nashville police have reportedly released a list of 47 items that they found at the home of the Covenant School shooter, whose name I avoid if at all possible. The transgender shooting suspect, obviously, she killed 3 young children and 3 adults. I don't know why news stories continue now that this person is dead and we have all of the video showing this person killing people. I mean, because you understand the security videos show plenty more than we actually see on the security videos. We simply, in a civilized society, we don't show people getting shot and killed if at all possible. You omit and edit those pieces of the video out. But the video exists, so why media outlets insist, and they do it consistently, not in just in this case. But I'm reading here, the transgender shooting suspect accused of killing 3 young children and 3 adults. No, she killed them. No, she killed them. And then the police got there, and they killed her, thank God. With guns. With guns. Good guys with guns. Anyway, the Metro Nashville Police Department has released a list of 47 items found by police officers conducting a search at her parents' home where she lived. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Get John's call and Dixon and yours as well, 615-737-9986. Also, a throng of individuals waiting outside of a Manhattan courtroom on basically nothing. I'll explain what I mean there, too. It is 12:31 on Super Talk. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. Accurate Mortgage Group is on my mind, and if you're thinking of buying or selling a home, I want them on your top of mind as well. Accurate Mortgage Group is a local company, but they're big enough to know all of the ins and outs of all of the different plans and programs available for you. Secondarily, they can help you independent of some of the toll-free numbers. They don't understand the neighborhoods. They don't understand the areas in which we live. Accurate Mortgage Group most certainly does because they live here. They have offices in Cool Springs. So if you want to sit down and talk with a person face-to-face about your challenges, maybe you're buying, maybe you're selling, maybe you're trying to downsize or upsize, perhaps you need a debt consolidation loan to build out your house and make it the home of your dreams that you've always wanted. Whatever your unique situation, Accurate Mortgage Group can help. They'll sit down with you in Cool Springs, or they can do it all by the phone. I mean, you can do everything regarding your mortgage over the phone and over the internet nowadays. It's pretty amazing. So go ahead and go to AccurateMTG.com. That's AccurateMTG.com to find out more information, or call Mike, Joe, Hino, or the rest of the crew. They can help you, I promise. Accurate Mortgage Group is a division of Acopia, LLC, an equal housing lender, NMLS 4664. Whether you want to build your own custom home, refinance your current home, sell or buy, Accurate Mortgage Group is your place. AccurateMTG.com. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super text lines I've been running. Phone lines as well. It's 12:35. Happy Lunch Bunch Hour on the Matt Murphy Show this April 4. Today is the tragic anniversary of the death of Martin Luther King, if I'm not mistaken. I just looked down on my pad and saw April 4th, and I think that's correct. April 4th, 1968, which would 68, 78, 88, 98, 08, 18, 45 years? I think that's about right. 45 years ago today at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, Reverend Martin Luther King gunned down by James Earl Ray. And every time I talk about this story, I say James Earl Jones, and I don't know why. I'm sorry.
You say James Earl Jones more than you'll ever say James Earl Ray in your lifetime.
That's correct. That's correct. I got accused of, and intentionally, anyway, James Earl Ray, not James Earl Jones, had nothing to do. Now, James Earl Jones did have something to do with the voice of Darth Vader, which is a reference I made earlier, and we'll get back to that in a moment. So here's what we know, and back to your phone calls, secondary to this. The transgender shooting suspect accused of who killed 3 young children and 3 adults last week. Apparently, according to a report out of the New York Post via Fox News, hoarded a suicide note, weapons, and ammunition at her home. The Metro Nashville Police Department released a list of 47 items found by officers conducting a search warrant at the family home of the shooter. Those items reportedly included several journals, a shotgun, cell phones, laptops, as well as folders and journals with notes on firearms courses and school shootings. According to the outlet, police said officers also found a school photo and 5 yearbooks from the Covenant School. Fox News Digital reached out to Nashville police today seeking a copy of the list, but did not immediately hear back before publication. Authorities are now saying the shooter had been under a doctor's care for an undisclosed emotional disorder and hid weapons in the family home, unbeknownst to the suspect's parents. You know, something has been made of that. And I understand that hindsight's 20/20. So I understand looking back on these events, we can see clearly the mistakes that were made. But I want to caution too much finger-pointing and blame on the parents. I don't know these parents. Obviously, the police are doing their due diligence to make sure that everything the parents are telling them is on the up and up. I just think that we are quick to judge a situation with the benefit of a hindsight. Because I'm hearing a lot of, how could the parents not know that they had 7 guns in the house? How did the parents not know that this was going on? How did I am certain that these parents understood that their daughter had trouble. I am certain that these parents were intimately aware that she had emotional and potentially even mental issues. So much so that they told her she did not need to own a gun. And she pretended to sell the gun that she had, the only one that they knew of, and then hid the rest of the weapons from the parents. To the point that I read a story last night out of the Tennessean that reported that the parents have indicated to the police on the morning of the murders that their daughter left their home with a red gym bag. And we now know that inside of that bag were the guns, some of them that she would be using for her murderous rampage. And according to the article in the Tennessean, the mother reports that she made a comment. Whoa, where are you going with a gym bag? And obviously, she did not get an answer at the time, and obviously we now know. This is not a situation where there were clear and present red flags available to the parents, at least based on the information that I've seen. Now, we could talk about ultimately the ramifications of allowing your kid to live in your home for the amount of time that they allowed this woman to live in her home. She was 28 years old, still living at home. You can talk about a lot of the ramifications concerning young people that have emotional or mental troubles hiding behind a curtain of transgenderism when maybe or maybe not that's the issue. But I think there's a lot of that going on. A lot of people believe in the presentation by many of these medical institutions that this is a solution to all of your unhappiness and troubles. And it just isn't. I'm not saying that some people aren't gender dysphoric. Some people are. But you look at the hockey stick of transgenderism in the United States of America, and you ask yourself, wait a minute, where did all this come from? Is it possible that it's being overdiagnosed as a quote-unquote solution to everyone's problems when it's not really? So I know that it's not, the sexy, yelly, screamy talk radio, these parents should have known better. No, I don't know that. I've spoken over the years with people whose family members turned out to be monsters. And, well, I'll give you a great example. There is an individual in Birmingham, Alabama by the name of Don Corley. Don Corley preyed on young boys, primarily young boys who were a part of his Boy Scout troop in the 1980s. Don Corley was eventually tried and convicted of multiple counts of inappropriate sexual activity with minors, most of whom, I think all of whom, were a part of his Boy Scout troop. And I had an interview with one of the then young men, now grown men, whom Don Corley sexually assaulted, molested, and had a conversation with this young person or middle-aged person now about him then and why his parents allowed this to go on. And he came to his parents' defense, as I expected him to, and said, look, they looked at this gentleman as somebody that could be a great mentor for me. He duped them much like he duped all of us. Even those who are mentally ill can manage to put on a good face, and those who love you most want to come to these worst types of conclusions the least. So I know maybe it's fashionable to question why didn't the parents do this and why didn't the parents do that. At the same time, I think the parents were just trying to do right. At least everything that I've read, the parents were trying to do right by their and this could change. Tomorrow, if new information comes out, so be it. The ongoing investigation, back to the article here, into the March 27th murders of 6 persons inside the Covenant School continues to show from all the information currently available that the killer acted totally alone. Here's what I don't understand, and I'm getting a little impatient on this front, and I wonder if you are as well. Why are we not seeing the contents of the so-called manifesto? I wish I had a better word for it because I think that word gives it too much weight and bearing, but we are where we are. Why are we not seeing this? The more you wait, the more I wonder how much of this are you striking from the record so as we don't see the totality of the mental illness that we're dealing with. Look, this could go any number of different ways. It could be all about transgenderism. It could be nothing about transgenderism. It could be all about the bills passed by the Tennessee legislature and the misinformation that went on there. It could be nothing about any of those things. The point is a void of information creates a vacuum, and that vacuum will be filled by something, and that something currently is a hell of a lot of speculation. And I don't understand what investigation you're currently protecting. Can someone explain it to me? I'm willing to listen. What investigation are we waiting on? We live in a day and age where, during the Trump administration, the president of the United States of America couldn't have a private conversation with a foreign leader in his office without crap leaking about it. So it occurs to me that the FBI and the judicial system, they seem to be able to leak what they want to leak. Yet we're not permitted to have this information. Is it a macabre interest? Sure. Is it necessary to understand greater motivation? No doubt. Is it important that we get this timely information right now? Yes. I remember a time several years ago when I was doing the same thing, not in Nashville, in Birmingham, not about Nashville, not about Birmingham, but about Las Vegas, Nevada, and the Harvest Music Festival. And we asked question after question after question regarding the motivations of that shooter who killed almost 60 people that day and wounded, over 800? Fired 1,100 rounds from the 32nd floor of Mandalay Bay. Oh, they interviewed the wife. She didn't know anything, we're told. Yeah, she knew he was buying a lot of guns, but, that's his hobby. Did he have a social media footprint? We're told no. Didn't write anything down? We're told no. I mean, the questions went on, and we never got any information. And that void of information has been filled by rampant speculation and conspiracy theory online. And I don't know what's true and what's not true. Let's not let that happen here. We, the public, the people of Nashville, as painful as it may be, deserve to know the truth. I mean, 4490 puts it succinctly. I think the reason that we haven't seen the manifesto is because the police chief reports to the mayor, and the mayor is a leftist who doesn't want any negative publicity to come out about the gay agenda. That's my opinion. Now, I'm not saying that person is right. What I'm using that as and I'm not knocking on you, 4490, but that is an example of how when you have a void of information, when you have a void of facts, that void becomes a vacuum, and that vacuum sucks in conspiracy theories and speculation and opinion where we ought to have facts. All right, let's go to the phones. William is next. William, thank you for your call. Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm fired up.
The whole issue with these people, it's bottom line is it's mental illness. It's absolute mental illness. It's perversion. They're perverted, and they should be hospitalized and treated until they are well. We need a society to stop condoning these kind of behaviors and celebrating these things. Like now Budweiser is on board. I would tell everyone boycott any product Anheuser-Busch put out. We need to step up and be strong as God-fearing people and as a nation of Christianity by and large. Not that I agree with all of that, but I do agree that at this point in time, we have a spirit of demonic presence over this country in such a heavy way where now the media, and I'm not saying you guys are all at fault, but media in general and entertainment is all celebrating this action and this new way of life is completely demonic. We need to stand together and shame this and come out and not condone it and be a part of it and call it what it is. It's wrong. It's pure evil. It's only going to get worse unless the American people stand up and push back against this completely. And like Thomas Jefferson said, from time to time, you have to refresh the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots, and that time is long overdue. It's long overdue. We're losing the battle. We're continuing to lose the battle. We need to take action and to be, obviously take action to let people know these things are wrong, absolutely wrong, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, William. Thank you for the telephone call. Why is it, do you think, that when the narrative suits the mainstream media, we get this information seemingly so quickly? We had the social media footprint and the writings and the journals of this racist scumbag POS in Buffalo within 2 days. I mean, didn't we? I think I'm remembering this correctly. We had a clear picture of the gross racist motivations behind that shooter before we had cleared that Tops grocery store. But now we're sitting on 8 days, waiting on 9 and nothing. I mean, we hear drips and drabs about the amount of weapons that came out of the home and the amount of journals that came out of the home, and that's all well and good. But for the life of me, and I don't understand, and that racist scumbag survived. They had an investigation to protect there. They have no investigation to protect here. They say that the shooter acted alone. The shooter is DRT, dead right there. And good for the police for doing so. It's 12:51. Donald Trump is being processed as we speak in New York City, awaiting arraignment. We'll tell you all of the details as it unfolds before us. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Currently, Donald Trump has arrived at a New York City courthouse to be arraigned on these trumped-up charges by the district attorney Alvin Bragg, some charges that the Department of Justice declined to prosecute, the Federal Elections Commission declined to prosecute. As he was heading over, Donald Trump offered this on Truth Social: heading to Lower Manhattan, the courthouse seems so surreal. Wow, they are going to arrest me. Can't believe this is happening in America. MAGA. We'll continue following this breaking news story, taking your telephone calls coming up in just a moment at Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. Former President Trump being processed at Manhattan Criminal Court. His motorcade arriving in the last hour. As he is arraigned, we'll soon know the contents of the indictment against the former president. ABC News legal analyst and attorney Jeffrey Robbins.
I expect that there will be a number of different felony charges in this indictment, ones which pair the falsification of business records with the intent to commit some other crimes, some state crimes, and not just the federal campaign finance law, in order to give the prosecution the best chance of surviving the fusillade of motions to dismiss that they're likely to face from the Trump legal team.
All of this, of course, stemming from an investigation into hush payments made to an adult film actress outside the courthouse.
The NYPD separating pro-Trump supporters from anti-Trump protesters, but both sides just as passionate and just as loud. They've got signs. The pro-Trump supporters are saying Trump 2024. He was a great president. Make America great again. That's what some of their signs are saying. And then on the other side of the barricades, you're seeing Trump signs that say Trump indicted. Trump lies all the time. No one is above the law.
ABC's Derek Dennis outside of the criminal courts building in Lower Manhattan. History in Europe as Finland officially joins NATO. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcoming Finland at a flag-raising ceremony at NATO headquarters in Brussels.
31 flags flying together as a symbol of our unity and our solidarity.
Finland got the green light to join once Turkey, the last holdout, approved its membership. But Russia has been against NATO's expansion, promising retaliation. And Russia blaming the pro-Ukrainian opposition for the murder of a pro-war military blogger this week in St. Petersburg. You're listening to ABC News.
All right, here we are. Here we go for hour number 2 of the Pat Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN on the airwaves, also on your app, streaming on your computer or on your television. You can dial us up on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch, and we invite you to do any and all of those things. As we continue until 3 o'clock, hand off to Brian Wilson in the drive at that time. Your call's coming up. Let's reset where we are in Manhattan. Let's reset where we are here in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. And get your thoughts on all of the things going on. And there is plenty going on this Tuesday. So Donald Trump has gone from Trump Tower to southern Manhattan, where he is currently being arraigned on charges. Then I suppose once that arraignment happens, the indictment will come out, and we will see what all of the hubbub is about, bub. As we do not know, we are merely speculating as to what the charges are until we see the indictment. We'll see the indictment after the arraignment. It is Donald Trump he threw out a truth social, I guess, what do they call them? Truths. He posted a message on Truth Social talking about how shocked he was that it was surreal that he was being arrested. His senior advisor, Jason Miller, was live tweeting the journey between Trump Tower and southern Manhattan. Donald Trump went in unseen. It is reported that he will not be handcuffed at any point. He will take fingerprints, but he will not have a mugshot, is our latest understanding, although I don't quite understand how that is possible if he requests one. One thing that Donald Trump is reportedly requesting is the ability to speak with the media at some point during his visit to the old courthouse. According to Fox News, Donald Trump is desirous to sit with the media. The details of the indictment still sealed, though the case centers around alleged monetary payments to Stormy Daniels. Trump is expected to plead not guilty to the charges, obviously. He does seemingly want to speak with the mainstream media. The Manhattan DA's office, ahead of this, I don't know if you noticed this, just as an aside, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office has scrubbed their Meet Our Team portion of his website. In what used to be the DA team members section that shows previous experience and affiliations, you now only see a not found page, which appears. The office also removed the Meet Our Team tab from its About Our Office portion of its site. The deletion means individuals who may search for the Manhattan DA team as Trump faces arraignment will come up with no information. So not only, think about this. Think about this for a moment. They'll claim that this is under the guise of security for their team, but isn't that always the way? The team of individuals that are responsible for coming up with this seemingly made-up indictment, connecting state law and federal law on federal charges that the federal government and the FEC has already declined to charge Trump on. Yet here we are with Alvin Bragg, a hotly partisan office in southern Manhattan. And now Donald Trump doesn't have the ability to see his accusers. They are nameless, faceless bureaucrats, which is how they want to be. So you've got that going on as we speak. Closer to home, obviously, continuing to cover the Covenant School story and continuing to ask the question about the ramblings and journals of this mentally insane individual. And I believe anyone capable of killing people in this fashion is mentally unstable and mentally unstained. That doesn't mean that they don't deserve to face punishment. It does mean that anyone willing to do this is mentally insane, in my estimation. That's not a clinical definition. That's a personal opinion. That said, the authorities in the case have at least leaked information. Nashville police are saying that they have a list of 47 different items found at the home of the Covenant School shooter. And that has leaked to the mainstream press, including a suicide note, weapons, and ammunition at the home. Yesterday, we reported to you that the shooter in this case fired some 150-plus shots while in the facility, killing 6 people, obviously, as we've reported over the week and a day since this occurred, 3 adults and 3 young people. In the meantime, there is other news involving the House of Representatives as there was absolute chaos last evening. You might recall in the aftermath of this event, there was a lot of caterwauling from the gallery earlier in the week in the House of Representatives. That caterwauling led to 3 Democrats in the House of Representatives, Gloria Johnson, Justin Pearson, and Justin Jones of Knoxville, Memphis, and Nashville, respectively, made asses of themselves on the floor of the House and attempted to disrupt the House proceedings by violating the rules. In response, last evening, the House of Representatives began proceedings by which the 3 Democrats may be expelled from the body. And yes, they can do this. And yes, it's legal. And yes, it's happened before. And yes, they deserve it. Yesterday, the 3 House Democrats Thursday, 3 House Democrats approached the podium, but without being recognized to speak. They broke chamber rules. They brought a bullhorn with them, and Gloria Johnson, Justin Jones, and Justin Pearson then began to lead protesters in the gallery with chants, riling up the gallery itself. Cameron Sexton has likened what the 3 did as leading somewhat of an insurrection, and I don't disagree with him. I mean, if we're going to use that word, why not use it appropriately? House Republicans have now formally introduced 3 expulsion resolutions, that coming at the end of yesterday's session. The resolutions claim the 3, quote, did knowingly and intentionally bring disorder and dishonor to the House of Representatives through their individual and collective activism. Actions. Freudian slip there. Final votes to expel the 3 members will occur on Thursday. At that time, Johnson, Jones, and Pearson will have the opportunity to defend their actions during that session. Here's the thing. I think the 3 of these individuals, were they rational people, could stand up and apologize for the chaos that they caused on the floor of the House of Representatives and the danger that they put some of their fellow members in. I mean, there were people that were spitting on the membership. State troopers had to physically hold back people from bum-rushing members who were trying to get to the bathroom, folks. This was not some, hey, hey, ho, ho, GOP has got to go, or some other nonsensical chant. This was a real and present danger to the membership. Protest is fine. I'm all about it. It is ingrained and embedded into the fabric of the United States of America, your ability to protest. But you don't have the ability, or should not have the ability, to disrupt the proceedings of the House of Representatives. That is literally attempting to usurp the authority and the rule of law in the state of Tennessee. And if it is not an insurrection, then you tell me what is. In the meantime, Larry's got a thought on all of this, and he's been holding for some time. I love hearing from you, 615-737-9986. Hey, Larry, how are you?
Hello, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
First of all, you know, when Hank's allowed to have his iPhone, he listens to you every day. But on a more serious note, you know, if Gloria was so concerned about gun violence, she'd worry about her own town, or a convicted murderer was let out with little or no bond and killed an innocent Rural King employee. And I'm going to go a little bit step farther than 4490. The crap that is not being let out by Metro Nashville PD is absolutely coming from John Cooper, the Munchkin.
So you speculate that John Cooper is the, and not the FBI, is the person that's holding back some of this information from the police department, because the police department has said that they have kind of acquiesced on the manifesto or the journals to the FBI. You think it's Cooper?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. but you have to remember, and although I do like that chief of police, and I think he's a good guy, I've actually met him twice. I think it's absolutely coming from John Mayor Munchkin Cooper, Mr. Eyebrow. I mean, I'm trying to hold my language back, Matt, because I don't want to be put on super secret probation, because I know how Bell K is. But no, I absolutely believe he has told them that no, they're not going to release a thing.
I just don't know. Okay, I think, and once again, this goes back to the point that I was making. You tell Hank I said, hey, Larry. Hank is Larry's goat, by the way. For those newbies in the audience who don't know. The truth of the matter is, it would be easy for me to say, absolutely, the Munchkin Mayor John Cooper is the problem here. The truth of the matter is, I don't know, and you don't know either. We do not have any way of knowing what the holdup is. But I will repeat what I said to you last hour, that in an arena where there is a void of information, where there is a desire for information, that void eventually becomes a vacuum, and that vacuum sucks in conspiracy theories and every opinion under the sun. And for the many of you that are calling in right now, we'll get a producer in the studio eventually, I promise you. Y'all hang in there. No. Judy, you get in there and do the news, kid. He's making lunch. He'll be all right. When there is a lack of information forthcoming to a public thirsty for facts, those facts are replaced with people's opinions and oftentimes speculation. Now, we speculate on this show all the time, and I tell you when that's happening. I tell you when it's going on. And there's nothing wrong with a certain amount of speculation, but Larry, here's what I don't want to do. I know that John Cooper is no friend of conservatism. I know he's no friend of guns or the Second Amendment. I get all of those things. But I don't know who's calling the shots. I would guess, and this is me speculating. Now, Larry, you and I are friends, so you can have one opinion, I'll have another one. I would guess it's the FBI telling them no. Why is the question? What are they trying to scrub? I had someone suggest to me last night. Well, I mean, they jokingly said, Murph, you got to have more than a week to write a really good fake manifesto, they said. And I, LOL, ha, ha, ha. But at the same time, I mean, what are we supposed to think? On the super text line, many of you are speculating as to the genesis of all of this, and I guarantee you this. Whether or not the entirety of the quote-unquote manifesto comes out, I promise you that at some stage we're going to find out what the holdup was and who was responsible for it. I'll do my dead level best to make sure that happens for you. The FBI, according to O229, the FBI has to do a thorough analysis of information before releasing. It takes a while to get everything in order to be able to speak on the matter. Does it? Does it take 9 days? Does it take a week? Maybe. I mean, you know what? O229 might be right. Maybe it's a week. Maybe it takes 10 days. Maybe it takes 2 weeks. Maybe it takes a month. Maybe it takes a year. I'm still waiting on the Las Vegas shooter information that is yet to be forthcoming. All we're told right now is there's no footprint. I mean, just about everything that we know about the Las Vegas shooter, we knew within 2 weeks. And nothing else has been forthcoming. And we were all told that everything's speculation. Now, that just might be the way that it is, or there could be something going on that the authorities feel like we don't need to know about. We'll keep monitoring the situation. Why is it and how long will it take? Remains to be seen. It's 1:19. We're also awaiting Donald Trump. How long does it take to be indicted? How long does it take to be arraigned? Well, we're all watching and waiting in New York City. We'll continue to break that down for you as well. Plus, if you've not heard the story about Bud Light, I'm not late to this party. We commented on it yesterday. I thought it was an April Fool's Day prank. I really did. And I thought that Bud Light would probably get into a spot of trouble about the April Fool's Day prank. But then I realized that trans activist Dylan Mulvaney was not going to engage in this sort of pranking activity regardless of the amount of money that Bud Light paid her, or him, pardon me. I'll fill in the details and tell you some of the names that are speaking back to the actions of Bud Light. That's coming up. It's 1:20 on Super Talk. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 124. We continue to watch these 3 police officers standing in front of some glass doors. I'll give you the lay of the land here. By the way, Matt Murphy with you till 3. Brian Wilson at that time from 3 until 7 o'clock with The Drive. We're covering all the news that's fit to talk about on Super Talk 99.7 WTN in our 312th edition, to include New York City. New York City! For the last, hour or so, thereabouts, we have been watching.
Started right after the show started.
Yeah, we've been watching 3 police officers, 1 female, 2 males. The 2 guys look like they've been with the department a few years. They look like they've been to a couple of donut shops in their time. I'm sure they've caught a lot of bad guys, cuffed them and stuffed them. But there they stand with their hands near their hips, with their thumbs looped into their belts. Oh, somebody just came out of the room. It's nobody. It was just a nobody. Somebody in a suit. But there we watch as the leftist media, breathless in their anticipation of some sliver of information regarding the arrest and arraignment of Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States. It is a shameful day. Considering, is there anyone among you of the belief that had this happen to, I don't know, Bill Clinton, that this would be going on? Oh, by the way, the thought occurred to me the other day, and I know I'm not first to this because I rarely am. But if you boil down to the meat and potatoes of what Donald Trump is being accused of, walk with me on this logic for a moment. So they're saying that he violated a state statute that misreported spending money that was designed to keep Stormy Daniels quiet regarding their affair. Now, they also have to link this to the motivation behind why he would do that. In other words, they claim they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt to any juror that not only did he mislabel the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, but he also did it specifically to benefit in the 2016 election, as opposed to, keeping it away from his wife or keeping it out of the public due to just general shame or whatnot. So they have to make that linkage to the 2016 election cycle. And I forget that for a minute. What sense does it make? So it's not illegal to pay somebody not to talk about a private issue. Like as a good example, I have paid Bell K large amounts of money not to talk about what went on at my home during the Super Bowl some months ago.
I have no comment to make about that.
There you go. See, I'm paying him good money. You hear what he said there? Now, what sense does it make that I'm paying through my attorney, or my attorney pays Stormy Daniels not to tell her story? Let's say that's true for the sake of argument. The New York district attorney is arguing.
Trump's coming out.
Oh, wait, hold on. Here comes Donald Trump. He is why he's looking very stern. He's stoic. And also, the president of the United States
there he goes.
Glances toward the camera and walks off camera, and that took 4 seconds. Donald Trump walked out of one area of the courthouse, out of a doorway, and walked to another area of the courthouse. We are now set to see that 4-second 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. We are set to watch those 7 steps on CNN. I can't even get out of it without laughing. On CNN and MSNBC and ABC and NBC and CBS, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
So that's effectively the perp walk.
That's it.
Oh, well, that was exciting.
I'm pretty sure that's all we're going to get. Unless Donald Trump chooses to address, I don't know that. So once they release him One would assume, here it goes, there's number 3 already. I'm watching #NeverCNN because I watch this garbage so you don't have to. It is my commitment to you in this radio show that I will watch this nonsense, throw up in my mouth, swallow it back down, and do it again. But over 30 seconds, they've already shown the repeat of the video 3 times because, it's all they got going on. Apparently, there are some pool reporters that are being allowed access more close to the events of this proceeding, although the judge in the case did not permit cameras to go live in the courtroom. He did permit several pool reporters to be there to document the events, although it's my understanding, and I think I have this right, that he would not allow any photographs, obviously no actual recording of what was going on, but he did not allow any photographs either, but he did allow several reporters to be there to document the events. Number 4.
Probably a sketch artist, too.
There you go. Are you watching the same claptrap that I'm watching?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
did want to push back a little bit on your comments earlier about what they're trying to prove.
Yeah.
You have to remember, the burden of proof on him is much, much lower because he's a racist and a Nazi.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I forgot about the racist Nazi provisions within the New York legal system. That's
in the Constitution.
That's actually a pretty good point. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. Article 5, Section 4 indicates that racists and Nazis are not provided the same constitutional protections as others. And then you go down to subclause 3, where it clearly indicates that racist and Nazi shall be determined by liberals.
Yes.
Number 5. Every time I say a number, by the way, it's the number of times they're repeating the 8-second perp walk that just occurred from within the courthouse. 615-737-9986. Real quick, I'll finish my point and we'll go to the bottom of the hour timeout. So the accusation is that Donald Trump's legal purpose was to prevent the public from finding out. Let's, for the sake of argument, say he was having an affair with Stormy Daniels or had a relation with Stormy Daniels, something the president vehemently denies. But they're accusing him of not adequately listing what the money was for on some sort of legal form. So their logic is that if you pay money, let's say if Bill Clinton pays money to Jennifer Flowers or to Paula Jones, both women received said money, that in order for Bill Clinton to be under New York law, right, with New York law at least, then he would have to list on the form a public document, hey, this $130,000, he put legal fees. Now, Donald Trump didn't put any of this. One of his people did. But they put down legal fees. But instead of legal fees, we're told that they were supposed to put down hush money payment to Stormy for the relationship that I contend we never had. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump. Okie dokie, 132, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Don't take a pill. Call Dr. Gill. I've been saying that for almost as long as I've been in Nashville, Tennessee, and I believe it too, friends. The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief, located in Franklin, within the sound of my voice. I encourage you, if you experience pain in your neck, in your back, anywhere within your back, upper, middle, or lower back, in your joints, in your hips, in your knees, anywhere that moves and it's painful to do so, please go see the Dr. Gill Center. Do yourself this favor. It does not cost an arm and a leg for you to get in there, get your examination done, get a complete diagnosis done, and find out exactly what's going on and what the Dr. Gill Center can do to help. I have done this. I have benefited. I am pain-free, thank you to the Dr. Gill Center, and you can be as well. Please do yourself this favor. Don't wait another day. Don't live another day with pain. Don't live another day having to resort to pills. Go ahead and call Dr. Gill. 615-882-4838. 615-882-4838 for the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The arraignment of the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is underway at a New York courthouse. We'll continue to give you updates as they become available as to the goings-on behind closed doors. I will update you on this. We are now up to 9 instances, 9, count them, and we will, of CNN regurgitating a 7-second clip that involves 7 steps of Donald Trump from one doorway to out of shot.
When 9/11 was happening, obviously that was extremely chaotic, and they kept repeating the picture, the footage of the second plane. And for a little bit, I was under the impression that was multiple planes. And it's sort of like this, where I'm looking up, I'm going, how many different doors can they film him walking through?
Right. Well, look, we've got a still shot of Donald Trump sitting in the courtroom now. They have a little something else to show us. There's Donald Trump sitting next to one of his attorneys. There are 2 other folks in the shot. Have no idea who those people are.
He's
Maybe
clearly very angry, and he's pondering his own guilt.
Yes, He's sitting there wallowing in his own sadness and guilt, wondering if he will look as good as he thinks he will in a lovely orange suit as DA Alvin Bragg contemplates what sort of handcuffs to put him on. They won't choose the gold ones, I'm sure, or the ones with a little frilly lace on them either.
Does he have branded handcuffs yet?
Man, he should.
Yeah.
Little Trump cuff? Oh,
Yeah.
I'd love that. That'd be good. Maybe do some
Cuff links.
some
that are
cuff
handcuffs?
links that are handcuffs.
Yeah, that'd be
That'd be good. Sell them from the Trump store. And oddly, and this was during a discussion prior to my coming on air with Ken Weaver, myself, and Johnny B was still here wrapping up a few things from Nashville's Morning News, and Weaver was of the indication that they were not going to mugshot Trump. Now, I knew they weren't going to handcuff him, and he was not going to have a quote-unquote perp walk per se. But then they said they weren't going to offer a mugshot because that would be publicly available to the media. And they know exactly what will happen because people can see through this garbage, which is precisely what it is.
So is it fair to say he was given preferential treatment?
Well, that's what I said. I said, wait a minute, hold on a second. You're going to give a president of the United States special treatment only because you know once you put that mugshot out into the public sphere what he's going to do with it? That doesn't seem right. Who was it? There was a Texas representative. I want to say his last name was Delaney, that did the best mugshot ever. This was like, there was a lot of Republican persecution going on where district attorneys along the lines of Alvin Bragg were attempting to go after certain Republicans in the aftermath. I mean, this was well after the contract with America and the Newt Gingrich Republican Revolution, but it was kind of in that vein. This is the early 2000s, I want to say. And there was a representative out of Texas that took a fabulous mugshot where he was just like a mule eating briars, man, just as smiling and, hey, what's going on? I heard Mandis the other day, and he asked the question, very appropriate one, is that what can you do in the mugshot? I think you can smile as much as you want. I don't think there's anything that precluded. I mean, the mugshot is there to demonstrate what you look like at the time of the arrest, face forward, face to the right. I mean, I've been there, done that. Wish I hadn't, but I have.
Yeah, the thing is most people, when they're getting their mugshot taken, they're not in the mood to smile. So
Right. And I want to say, and I could have the name completely. I'll find it. It was a Texas.
Are you talking about Tom DeLay?
Tom DeLay. There you go. Wasn't he Texas?
Yeah, but he was Speaker of the House at one point, wasn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
And he, if my memory's correct, and look, a lot of bourbons between then and now, but I seem to remember he just eating, smile, hey, what's going on? Like it was the best day of his life. A mugshot, as Tammy writes in, and she's exactly right. A mugshot equals money. A mugshot equals T-shirts. A mugshot equals the people of the United States of America laughing their butts off at this ridiculous political persecution and prosecution. Emily is next up in Mount Juliet. Thank you, Emily, for the call. My adopted hometown in Tennessee. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to talk about the mass shootings and an idea that doesn't involve any politicians, and it's free. I'm a retired mental health clinician, and I would suggest that all parents go through their kids' rooms, know what's under their roof. If their child has a history of a behavior disorder or mental health treatment, they ought to be doing that anyway for suicide prevention. That's my 2 cents, Matt.
Well, I agree with that. I think for a lot of parents, and I'm just talking with you, I'm not disagreeing with you because, I mean, obviously that's something that's good advice. I don't know these parents, and I wouldn't presume that I do. I wouldn't presume to put thoughts inside of their head, and I'm not a parent, Emily, so it's difficult for me to comment on it. But I know that it would be hard for me to believe that a family member of mine, any of my nieces or nephews, had the ability to commit an atrocity such as this. And you have to believe that the parents, while they recognized that this individual had some mental issues and they acknowledged that she was seeking some mental treatment, you have to believe that they never saw this coming. They were nose blind to it,
And this is not specifically to those parents, because my heart goes out to them,
right?
Just as all of the parents that lost someone that day. But this is something that parents need to start doing. And, who cares about their privacy? They're minors. They're living under your roof, even if they're adults living under your roof, particularly if they have mental health history. Like I said, for their own protection.
It is one of the...
It's hard to hide a rifle.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm quite curious about amongst hundreds in this case. That is, how deep did this mental issue go? What are we talking about? Are we talking about, somebody that wanted to seek some therapy? I mean, heck, I've been to a therapist before during, some bad times in my life. That's a little different than, some serious mental diagnosis of some sort of disorder. And
Sure.
maybe it's the former, maybe it's the latter, but your advice is well taken. And I would say this, Emily, and let me ask it in the form of a question. So if you had kids living with you, even if they're 23, 24, you just kind of establish it on the front end. Look, you're living in my house, and I'm going to go into your room, and I'm going to clean your room on occasion. And you know what? I mean, that's just the way that it is if you want to live here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get it.
If I had and this is for that. If I have there's so many things about this case. The money, were they funding her lifestyle? And again, I feel for them. No one would want to be in that position. But I think if I had a 28-year-old living with me instead of in their own home, it'd be my house, my rules. So,
Emily, thank you for the thoughts and thank you for the call. I appreciate them. I think they're well spoken and articulated. The entire conversation is foreign to me, in as much as I've let you guys know that I'm primarily raised by my grandparents. My mother was there and present. She had a malignant brain tumor when I was 5 years old, and that took her out of commission for a number of years. She made a dramatic and incredible comeback, but she always needed assistance, and that assistance for a large portion of my childhood, between like the age of 8 and 12, came in the form of my grandparents. My mother then eventually remarried, and that person was not a very good individual in a lot of different ways. He had a lot of PTSD from Vietnam, and he took that out on young people, primarily me. And so I eventually moved back in with my grandparents and lived a number of years before my mother moved into an apartment very close to my grandparents, and eventually she was in an assisted living facility. I say all that to say that my grandparents raised me. And I was 17 at the time that I graduated high school. I was one of those babies. I didn't turn 18 until September of my freshman year of college. And so I left my grandparents' house when I was 17 years of age, and I never went back. And it was never a consideration. Now, I mean, obviously I went back to visit. But in all of my travels and all of the ups and downs of life, through all of it, moving to Connecticut, moving back to Georgia, doing this, that, and the other thing, moving to this community, that never once did I consider asking my grandparents to move back in. It was just never a consideration. You're grown. You're 22 years old. You're 24. You don't live here. You're a grown person. I mean, maybe that was me being short-sighted. And I'm not saying at all that my grandmother would have welcomed me back with open arms. Don't get me wrong. It was just never a consideration. So it's difficult for me to put myself in the mindset of someone who's 28 years of age living at home. But I don't disagree with the caller that I don't care what age you are, you're living in my house, then you have to abide by certain rules. And one of those rules would be that there's not a tremendous amount that's sacrosanct in that room. You got to go there. You got to do that. And sadly, particularly if there's a sign of mental impact or illness, I say all of that and I agree with her, and a lot of you on the super text line are agreeing with her as well. At the same time, no parent should be expected outside of the clear and present reality of what's inside their daughter's head. Meaning you find a journal I mean, in the real world, if you start trying to look through the private items of your adult child that's still living at home, that adult child goes away, right? You're not solving the problem. You're just pushing them further away. I'm just throwing it out there as a devil's advocate argument that I can't for a moment believe that these parents could conceive of their daughter doing something like this. In the meantime, in other news, we're up to 12 now, Bell. At least that's the ones that I've caught. I may have missed some, but we're up to 12 of that, and then we get the continuous showing of the one photograph shot that we have where the one New York police officer is wearing a mask for some reason. What do they have? Do they have a cold? Is it cold and flu season up there in NYC? Why are you wearing a mask in that courtroom? Oh, I guess you're worried about the COVID-19. You're one of those people that have bought into the Fauci lies. 150 Super Talk 99.7 WT, and more calls coming up, more thoughts coming up, and more updates on the continued goings-on in New York City involving the Trump arraignment. Plus, I made a promise that I would deliver some response to the news concerning Dylan Mulvaney and Bud Light. We'll do that in the 2 o'clock hour on Super Talk. Supertalk 99.7 WTN. So Donald Trump has now pleaded guilty. Pleaded or pled? I guess pleaded. We're going with pleaded. Pled? I'm getting looked at funny by Mac Maury. Is it pled or pleaded?
He is pled.
Let's go to the super text line. They know everything. 615-737-9986. No, I got tickled, guys, because I looked. You know, they've got the Trump supporters and the Trump detractors separated by these barricades, and there's an avenue of about, 8 feet or so between them. And so they're standing there shouting back and forth at one another. I would play this for you, but over the radio, it's probably pretty nonsensical, and it includes a lot of expletives that I can't air on radio, and if we bleeped it, it would just be bleep. But one Trump supporter and one Trump detractor got into a Yo Mama shouting match, which is never not funny. Like, randomly, they're blah, 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 randomly, you hear some guy go, hey, yo mama. My mama? How about your mama? Yo mama's so fat, when she sit around the house, she sit around the house. Yo mama's so ugly, she got to tie a pork chop around her neck, make the dog play with it. Another hour of Yo Mama jokes.
Yes.
I can do it.
Yes. Oh, I'm so in.
It would be better than watching a door, which is what we're doing right now with the Donald Trump stuff. Here comes news with Mac Maury on Supertalk 99.7 WGN.
Two o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, 80 degrees. Going to be a mostly cloudy day. Sun peeking out every now and then. Weather in just a few minutes. Right now, as you just heard from Matt Murphy on WTN, former President Donald Trump has pled not guilty to 34 counts here in his indictment. This is all now during the arraignment at a courthouse in Manhattan. Chuck Sievertson.
Donald Trump has just been processed as a defendant. His fingerprints were taken. Outside the courthouse, these protesters, both for and against the grand jury indictment. So far, no trouble. Uniformed police are on rooftops and balconies keeping watch. There are a lot of tourists in the crowds on a bright, sunny, mild day. The judge in the case, Juan Merchan, just presided over a case against the Trump Organization and sentenced Mr. Trump's longtime chief financial officer, says ABC News chief legal analyst Dan Abrams.
This is a judge who had promised Alan Weisselberg a 5-month sentence and who said that at the end of the trial, that after everything he had heard in the case, that if he hadn't promised Weisselberg just 5 months, he would have given him more time.
Details of the specific charges against the former president are to be made public soon.
34 counts again. Trump pled not guilty, falsifying business records. If you look at the last 4 national polls, and if you average them, Trump is at over 50%, Governor Ron DeSantis at 22%. That gap was only 11 points about a month ago. And the White House has not commented on this besides today calling for peaceful protests, saying that people have a right to say their mind, but that there's no place for violence in the United States. And going over to news here in Tennessee, the last 2 victims of the Covenant school shooting will be buried this week. Today, Mike Hill's loved ones will say their goodbyes. He was the beloved custodian at the school. Social media posts describe the kind of person Hill was, and his family tells Channel 4 they have seen all those posts.
From all of the messages we have received through Facebook and Instagram and text messages, were all about how the kids love Big Mike.
A GoFundMe for Mike Hill has collected at least $600,000, which is far beyond the original goal of $25,000. And crime here in Tennessee. News 2 reports that a Clarksville nurse, 42-year-old Leon Hensley, has been sentenced to about 24 and a half years on child pornography charges. It was in 2021 when officials were investigating Hensley as they heard allegations of him communicating with a minor female. Hensley reportedly sent a girl a nude photo of a woman, told her to pose like that. He claimed he needed help with a photo shoot. He was charged in June of last year and pled guilty 3 months later. In the investigation, police found a camera at Hensley's house with multiple pictures of unidentified women in hospital rooms, airports, tanning beds, and much more illegal content. That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, folks, Efficient Heating and Cooling is simply the very best when it comes to taking care of your AC within your home. Now, I've been begging of you I've pleaded with you, as a matter of fact, that you call Efficient Heating and Cooling. I'll plead it and pled that you call Efficient Heating and Cooling and get them to schedule a maintenance visit. It's so simple. It's never going to cost you over $125. And that is, no matter how many units you have. Oftentimes, it's going to be considerably less than that. Jeff Eddy makes that commitment to you. Jeff Eddy and Efficient Heating and Cooling are simply the best when it comes to heating. And obviously, this time of year, we're thinking more about AC on your property. And let's make sure that the family is as healthy as possible by getting the ducts cleaned, getting the AC unit cleaned itself, and making sure that everything's operating as efficiently as possible so you don't have needless and untimely expenses. And when it comes time, of course, they're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric and an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. EfficientHVAC.net. That's EfficientHVAC.net, or call 615-784-4424. 784-4424 for Efficient. All right, as we speak in New York City, let's get after it. It is an arraignment that has turned into an indictment that has turned into a plea of not guilty on 34 separate counts. The indictment is being unsealed as we speak, and we're trying to digest all of this. We're taking your telephone calls on it in our final hour today as the Matt Murphy Show continues until 3 o'clock. 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. Would love to hear from you. We need to put a few things to bed, a few matters to bed. All my phones just went away. I don't know about that. You can give us a call any time of your choosing, however, at the aforementioned telephone numbers. All right, so you ready, Mac Morey? I think I have I have two sources here.
Okay.
That tell me one of my sources says the word at the heart of the controversy is the past tense of the verb to plead.
Yes.
Which comes in two forms, pleaded and pled.
Oh.
Both of them are correct, says this source.
Wow.
But then I have a more intimate source.
Okay.
My second intimate source is in the form of an associate justice with the Court of Criminal Appeals in the state of Alabama. And I don't care if he's right or not. I'm going with him. Because he's an associate justice with the Court of Criminal Appeals of the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
And he says that while pled might be considered okay and all right and all that the preferred nomenclature is pleaded.
Pleaded?
That's what he
So
said.
if you say pled in his court, you're in contempt?
I don't know. I could ask the judge.
Yeah, ask him. I want to know.
I just think pled sounds better than pleaded.
Now,
I completely agree.
Pleaded?
Pleaded sounds like you're stuttering.
Well, pleated sounds like as in like it sounds like I'm wearing a nice pair of pants from 1996, right? And I got cuffs on the bottom. I got the pleats and the signs.
Lots.
My judge says that yes, both are no doubt correct, but in my chambers and writings, it is pleaded. But pled is used more and more. I just think it's wrong. And then I got a smiley face emoji. Now, from Black's Law Dictionary and the chief editor there, they say it is pleaded, which has always been the predominant past tense of to plead, while pled is, I could never say the word, colloquial.
Colloquial?
Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
One way or the other.
Fair enough.
No, one way or the other, Donald Trump said he didn't do it. 34 times he said that. He says he did not falsify business records, 34 separate counts, which seems a bunch, which seems a lot for what he is accused of doing. Literally accused of falsifying documents by writing down that he was presenting legal fees to Michael Cohen, money that Michael Cohen at one time or another has said that he never actually received. So you've got that going on. We're following that story as the arraignment continues of Donald Trump. There are no sights or sounds coming out of the courtroom outside of one photograph of Donald Trump sitting with his attorneys. Well, I guess there's 2 or 3 different shots, but they're all of him at the same spot. You have one 7-second clip of Donald Trump walking from one room to another that the mainstream media that they're showing over and over and over again. John writes in and says, Matt, pleaded is the formal past tense way to conjugate plead.
Okay.
Southern boys would say pled.
Southern boys?
I don't know.
Where are we?
We're in the South.
Well, maybe that has something to do with it.
and you know, I would go over some of the other commentary regarding the past tense of to plead, but our super text line has been inundated with yo mama jokes.
Yes.
So
keep it coming.
I was tickled. We were watching some of the action outside of the courtroom, and there was a clip that's running around where, you know, Donald Trump supporters and Donald Trump detractors had to be separated, and they put a barricade up, and there's a space of 8 to 10 feet between them. And so they're yelling across this empty space at one another, and it's absolutely comical. And in a 30-second clip, it went from just a massive amount of cursing to one guy go, hey, yo mama. What, mama? Yo mama. And now we're doing yo mama stuff.
Which seems good.
You know, like Chris writes in, your mama's so fat the last photo she had was an aerial shot. That's pretty good. Your mama's so fat when she walks across the room, the radio skips. That's like old school. That's like album jokes. Your mom is so fat she sat on a quarter and made change. I altered that one a little. I think my version's a better version of that. Anyway, we're not doing that. We're getting into actual news, content of the day, because there's way too much going on. Maybe one of these days on a Friday we'll get into it. So the other action that's going on involves the Tennessee Republican majority in the House of Representatives making a decision to move forward with possible expulsion of 3 Democrats. These Democrats had it coming, folks. They knew what they were doing, and they did it anyway. They understand the ultimate ramifications, and these people went on the floor of the House of Representatives in the General Assembly in the state of Tennessee and flaunted the rules, thinking that they were above the law. No one should feel above the law. And clearly, the rules of the House of Representatives and the laws of the state of Tennessee give the Speaker of the House the authority to accept a call for expulsion because of this disorderly behavior demonstrated by the 3 Democrats. Now, I should note that Gloria Johnson of Knoxville, Justin Jones of Nashville, and Justin Pearson of Memphis are all three invited on this radio show. I would love to hear their excuse making as to why they felt the need to bring a bullhorn to the floor of the House of Representatives. Secondarily, I would love to open up this third hour to any and all commentary regarding specifically what the youngsters that appeared at the State House really want out of their lawmakers. Because here's the deal, folks. I don't know that the state of Tennessee, sometimes I need John Harris when I don't have him. The state of Tennessee, can the state choose to ban assault weapons on its own?
Sure. California did.
There are limitations to what they can do, however.
Well,
I mean, the Constitution obviously supersedes. It's the reason they had to pass a federal ban to begin with. I need to do a little research. I need to refresh my memory on some of these things. I understand
Plus,
that states
there's so many California laws that are over the line that if they ever made it to the Supreme Court, they'd be thrown out 9-0.
No, I agree with that, obviously. And I understand that there are certain ways that, I think you can offer magazine limitation. I am certain that we have plenty of 2A aficionados in the audience that can clarify some of my thoughts on this because, frankly, I haven't looked at it long enough that I don't remember. But I know that there are certain things that states can do, but there are certain things that states cannot do. And Heller v. D.C., I think that's 2008 decision, clearly demonstrated that this is not a quote-unquote state militia amendment. This is an amendment that grants an individual right to individual people to keep and bear arms individually and collectively as a militia group. So there are only certain things that states can do to limit the ability to keep and bear above and beyond what you might see on the federal level. Now, that said, there are things that they could do. All I heard yesterday as Dan Mandis and I made an appearance at the beginnings of the protest March for Our Lives rally was a regular call to ban assault weapons. Well, first and foremost, what does that mean? What is an assault weapon? How are you defining that term? Because there's no gun that's called an assault weapon. There's no handgun. There's no long gun. Oh, an assault rifle. No, that's not what AR stands for, folks. Armalite rifle, which was obviously a civilian replication of a fully automatic military use rifle. And you take away the ability to go from rapid fire to burst fire, and you make that rifle that lighter weight rifle single fire, and there you have your civilian application.
Yeah, you're just a racist who wants kids to die.
Well, and I was told yesterday that these things haven't been around very long, and you need to understand, well, they've been around since the 1950s. I mean, I think Colt came out with the AR in 1958 or 59, if I'm not mistaken. Their patent ran out in 1977, which is why these other companies eventually came out with their own models of what are now classified as ARs, although most of them are called something different. I mean, one of the ones that I have is an M4 V7. So you can call them all kind of, but that doesn't make it an M4 because it's not an M4. M4 is a fully automatic.
Sure, it's right there in the name.
Just like AR, it's got to stand for assault rifle. Murph, what are you thinking? So beyond an out-and-out ban, and my questions are simple, and I'm not trying to oversimplify this. How do you define assault weapon? And if we were to agree, which we won't, but if we were to agree that we need to ban those, what are you going to do about the other 98% of gun murder that happens in the United States of America every year? It does not take a lot of internet sleuthing. It would take less time than it took me to look up the past tense of the verb to plead. Less time than that to find the FBI statistics on gun murder in America. 98% of gun murders in America are committed with handguns. So if our goal is to prevent murder, if our goal is to value security over freedom, which is what this does, then how do you ensure that the people are secure in their persons with regard to their safety? How do you do so without being in complete violation of the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States? And secondarily, what do you do about handguns?
John Harris is on the hotline.
Oh, see, John's got good taste in radio. Either John was listening or someone that knows John was listening, and they said, hey, John, Murphy's struggling with the Second A application here, and he needs your help. Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing fine, and you're right. Someone was listening because I was in another meeting.
I love it. And they said, hey, they're calling your name. I said, where's John Harris when I need him?
Hey, before we get to the unimportant stuff, John, is it pled or pleaded?
Pled.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
See, I'm telling you, it's. I've told these guys it's either or either, John. I'm trying to tell them, but they don't believe me. John, that debate aside, there are not. I mean, these folks that are demanding a ban on assault weapons, whatever that means, and I'll set that nebulous term aside for a moment. What we believe they want a return to the federal long gun, quote-unquote, assault weapon ban from 1994 to 2004. Tennessee, even if it wanted to, and it most certainly does not, because I believe the vast majority of our representatives in the General Assembly understand and value the Second Amendment of the Constitution, even if they wanted to, they can't just do everything that some of these folks are demanding. There are obvious constitutional limits on what even the legislature could do, are there not?
There are now huge constitutional limits on what the legislature can do. And frankly, most of them, there are some exceptions, but most of them are not aware of those new constitutional boundaries.
Like, let's say that you and I, good Lord forbid, magically move to California. In a liberal state full of a liberal legislature, they can't even do some of these wholesale actions that some of the activists that we've been listening to over the last several days are demanding, could they?
No, well, technically they can't. You know, the practical problem is they can pass it and then they put the cost and the burden off on someone to take it through the federal court system to get it struck down. So it might have a, sort of a dead man walking kind of existence.
Right.
But then the U.S. Supreme Court in that Bruin decision from last June has made it clear that any restriction that any state or local or federal agency or government tries to impose on the rights of people to keep and bear arms, and that's a very broad spectrum, is on its face unconstitutional unless a similar law, or what they refer to as an analog, which would still be a similar law, existed as part of the national historical tradition as of 1791. So it's not even enough that a state had that law in 1791, and they picked that date because that's the date on which the Second Amendment was ratified. So all of this stuff, red flag laws, I mean, and I'm seeing it now as a litigator, there are significant laws as part of the Gun Control Act, for example, that people have assumed for decades were unchallengeable, that have been struck down in the last year.
Do you have a second? Can I
Sure.
ask you to go? I want to ask you a question that I recognize is going to take more than 30 seconds to answer, and it has to do with automatic weapons and how the courts justified the limit. And I'm not arguing whether or not they should. I'm just asking John the legal question about how the argument was made that we are allowed fairly easy access in terms of ownership to semi-automatic weapons, but not rapid-fire weapons along the lines of what we see in the military, the actual weapons of war. 222, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. That's back Nashville this weekend. It is the Nashville Home Show where you can discover, you can plan, and you can accomplish tasks of the home. The Nashville Home Show is this Thursday, April 6th through Saturday, April 8th at Music City Center. I saw them getting ready for that today as I was out at the Music City Center for a prayer breakfast. 3 days only for great deals, new ideas, and practical advice from trusted experts. You can talk to HGTV's The Laundry Guy. That's Patrick Richardson. Plus, see the Rock Place Bellegarde Outdoor Living Showroom for backyard inspiration, kitchens, baths, landscape, and so much more. Gentlemen, buy tickets for the ladies in your life and go with them. Buy tickets early and save at the NashvilleSpringHomeShow.com. That's NashvilleSpringHomeShow.com. The Nashville Home Show is the ideal place to find new ideas and to get great practical advice that you're looking for, from kitchen to bath to, how about outdoor landscapes? A wonderful place to get concepts and ideas for that. Plus, as I mentioned yesterday, you get a lot of swag. They give you a swag bag and you fill it with all kind of things. You'll get rulers, you'll get yardsticks, you'll get measuring tapes, you'll get all sorts of stuff at the Nashville Home Show. Thursday, April 6th through Saturday, April 8th at the Music City Center. Be there.
Former President Donald Trump right now pleading not guilty to 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. We look at that and more coming up 2:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Anybody else notice that? Anybody else notice how he focused on the word pleading there? Pleaded. Pled. He is leaving the courthouse as we speak. Donald Trump getting ready to leave criminal court after his arraignment and the indictment.
Are you kidding me?
That's what
they're letting this dangerous of a criminal back out onto the streets.
Well, that's the way they do now.
Was there bail set?
There's no bail in New York anymore.
Good Lord, how many men is
the common thief on the street, the rapist and murderer, and Donald Trump? They all get out without bail. That's the way that goes. So there you go. All right, back to a more serious subject. We are being told, and Mac Morey's on top of it out of the newsroom, and he's coordinating with Bell because we got to bring this to you live. Just after 2:30, after the news, we are told that Metro Nashville police officers Rex Engelbert and Officer Michael Collazo are speaking to the media this afternoon. And we will find a source, and we will bring that to you on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. John, my question is, more broadly, the justification on the exclusion, and I understand that you can, in fact, jump through hoops. Is this how they get away with this exclusion of automatic weapons in terms of gun ownership, that if you fill out the right forms, if you go through the process, you actually can own an automatic weapon?
Oh, you absolutely can. Without a doubt, you can do that. Here's the sort of the backstory on that. The federal government in 1934, following the Prohibition era, decided that, John Dillinger and others were running around with these fully automatic weapons and short barrel shotguns and suppressors. And they were just, gangsters and thugs, and they wanted to ban civilian ownership of, machine guns and suppressors and these short barreled.
Really?
Oh, sorry.
And then when Congress started debating that issue, it's really curious, but they pretty much conceded in the debate that because of the Second Amendment, they couldn't ban civilian ownership of military-grade weapons, including the machine gun. But what they figured they could do, now keep in mind this is 1934, when you could buy a Tommy gun for $150, is they figured because of the Commerce Clause that they could impose a sales tax or a transfer tax on them. So they imposed a $200 tax. Well, that tax has never changed since 1934. So today, if you want to buy a machine gun or a suppressor or an SBR, SBS, assuming you can find one for sale, I'm talking about machine guns because there's limits on the quantities of them that are available. It's a $200 transfer tax, but it's about a 1-year waiting period for the ATF to process your $200 payment in 2-page form. But no, you absolutely, civilians can own them in Tennessee and almost every other state.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that. John, you and I, a lot going on today. I so appreciate you spending some time with us and helping me out in regard to some of the nuance of this info. And let's get together because I think all of this merits a further discussion when the time is right about the Second Amendment, about Tennessee law, and about how we ought to I firmly believe that we should be encouraging Tennesseans to keep and bear arms, as is their constitutional right and their God-given right, as opposed to going the other way with this. And I appreciate the leadership of many of our House of Representatives and senators in the General Assembly. So let's have a conversation moving down the road.
Excellent. Let's do it.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you. There's John Harris with the Tennessee Firearms Association. Donald Trump's leaving the courthouse. We're anticipating some remarks by the 2 police officers involved in the shooting of the assailant at the Covenant School. That's on the way next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
"32 minutes after the hour of 2 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey with your top stories. Right now, 81 degrees, partly sunny. Weather forecast coming up in just a few minutes. Former President Donald Trump right now pleading not guilty to 34 felony counts for falsifying business records in Manhattan today. This is for the hush money case to Stormy Daniels. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie says Donald Trump was always fascinated with the justice system.
He's not unacquainted with this process, even though this is his first time as a defendant. He was interested in it. He would ask me lots of questions about it. He had lots of opinions about it. And so I think it's probably a surreal moment for him.
And staying with the story, John Santucci says that in the last number of days, Donald Trump has been more subdued and uncertain about today.
Even heading up last night from Florida, all the cameras trained on the plane, I'm told the former president was watching the coverage, and one of his aides used a strange word with me, which was melancholy. They said he was watching it, he wasn't enjoying the coverage. It was absolutely the weight of it hitting him, as he's been talking to many people and doing a phrase that I know Donald Trump does with people when he's not sure, and that is, what do you think of this? How is this playing? What's the coverage like? How is this going to move forward for me?
Well, if you look at the last 4 national polls and average them, it has Trump at around over 50%, Governor Ron DeSantis at about 22%. That gap was only 11 points about a month ago. And the White House has not commented on this throughout the whole proceedings of this case throughout the last few weeks. Besides today, they've called for peaceful protests, saying that people have a right to say their mind, but that there's no place for violence in the United States. And the NFL and country music stars are holding a concert to help the Covenant schools, and it's happening tonight. Here's Channel 4's Carly Gordon.
It was organized by Eric Decker, Delaney Walker, and country artist J.T. Hodges. The original plan was to raise money for mental health outreach.
And right now, we're going to transition to that press conference right now live. Nashville police officers who responded to the school shooting at Covenant are speaking to reporters.
Our team who immediately entered the Covenant building on March 27th. There was also very important work being done by all of Nashville's military components. To begin today, Chief Drake has some initial thoughts about that response.
Today, and the commander about their efforts, what they just detailed in the day. But there was, you will hear that there was an officer taking gunfire that took cover. You'll hear in the future that this officer also went in and pulled a kid out of this school to safety. We want to make sure that we know that while we're highlighting these officers, there's a lot more that was going on. The first responders that responded, Rex Engelberg, Mike Colazzo, and Sergeant Mathis, did what we were trained to do. They formed together, they got prepared and went right in, knowing that every second, every moment wasted could cost lives. And I'm so incredibly proud of not only them, but other members of our police department as well. I watched video of officers who went into the school, took pulse of the victims, hoping there was life in these people, grabbed these kids and ran out of the school, hoping to save lives. I'm so incredibly grateful for them. We set up a reunification site for kids and for officers to come together to reunite with parents. I had parents at the scene who were telling me things like, hey, I found one of my kids, but I can't find other. And all I could say at that moment was, please go to Woodmont Church, and thank you, Woodmont, for reunification. At the same time, I knew there was 3 victims, and I was just praying and hoping the person I was talking to, it wasn't them, because I could see the pain and the hurt that they were dealing with. Also to our officers and our chaplains and counselors who went to Vanderbilt University Hospital, who spoke with the families, gave counseling to the degree that at the funeral services, the families wanted to have these counselors and chaplains and behavioral health counselors with their families. It's just an incredibly tough day, but I'm really thankful to them. I'm thankful also to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I listened to an interview of one of the doctors and said he just wanted the opportunity to save lives. He didn't get that opportunity. Neither did our personnel. But they were able to go in and prevent more from being harmed. Also, our investigative team, who had to painstakingly go through everything that went through that school, every video, every victim. And as I walked through the hallways and seen people in the hallway and all the things that I saw, they had to go through this hour by hour, day after day, painstakingly going through journals, and this investigation is still ongoing. We'll say thanks to our federal partners as well for coming out and just being just totally engaged with what we had going on. To our crime scene experts, the civilians who you never really hear about, but they're a major part of what we do, to reconstruct crime scenes, to go in and to pick up evidence and to gather whatever is needed to put that together for whatever case that we're looking at. They were there hour after hour as well. I want to give a special thanks to our partners at the fire department and paramedics. In our training, when I first trained years and years and years ago, we were trained to go in, continue going towards the threat, stepping over anything, any casualty, whether it's a police officer, victim, until the threat was taken out, and then you go back and extract. But now we have medical personnel that wear ballistic helmets, ballistic vests. They can go in when we go in and extract people, hoping that we can do this in a manner that we can save lives. Also, to our dispatchers, who, if you can imagine, taking call after call. And I hear 25 to 30 calls came in, they were inundated, and they had to listen to people screaming, crying, hearing gunfire, and triaging these calls and dispatching it to officers. I want to say thank you to our entire team. What you don't know with our training is that one officer is from Central Precinct, the other is from Midtown, and just so happened when the call came in, they formed together, and you would have thought that they worked together all the time. But that's not the case. That's just how we train and prepare. I want to give a special thanks, and this is not said often, to the teachers at Covenant School. The teachers had gone through active aggressor, active shooter training recently. Their efforts also saved lives. They knew how to have the kids on the wall, away from the windows, out of the hallways. Where we could have had a lot more casualties, they were able to protect these kids as well. And I want to say thank you to the teachers. I want to express my condolences to the 6 families. I've had the opportunity to visit all of the funerals so far, 5. I have one more, which is Ms. Kuntz, which will be tomorrow. I've had the opportunity to talk to parents, and they are incredibly thankful for everything. And what I've learned in this is I've renewed my faith, because as I sat in a church Saturday, and I watched students from Covenant School take flowers down to the altar. And literally, I'm in tears, and the other first responders, police officers, firefighters, we're in tears. And I look at these kids, and they look at us, and they say, thank you for your service. And they believe that their classmate is going to heaven, that they're in a better place, and they're not hurting. The ones that was hurting the most was us. And so I want to thank Covenant School for instilling that in them and for teaching them there's maybe something better. They're not hurting anymore. Thank you to all of you all. I know it's been intensive covering all of this. I'm incredibly thankful for you. I'm incredibly thankful for our team. I'm thankful to our mayor. I've not had the opportunity to tell him thank you for leading us through this during this time. To Don Aaron, to Chris Mumford, to others. This has not been an easy time. And I'll have to say this. On the way to work one day, shortly after the shooting, usually I see kids and I smile because I wonder what their future is going to be. And the next day I'm headed in and I see kids and I'm in the car by myself and I'm crying. And instead of being happy about thinking about these kids' future, I'm thinking about these 3 kids and these other adults, well, especially these 3 kids, would never get to experience whatever was in store in life for them. And I always say this to our men and women, no one ever said it would be easy, but they said it would be worth it. I'm totally proud of our men for what they did. So thank you.
Commander Dayton Wheeler oversees operations of the Midtown Hills Precinct, the precinct in which the Covenant campus is located. Commander Wheeler will speak with you about the broad response of the officers from the Midtown Hills Precinct and the impact that response has had. Commander Dayton Wheeler.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start off by saying the family members and the victims of this tragedy have been in my thoughts and prayers since that Monday morning, and we will continue to pray for them as they walk through this tragedy. So Monday, March 27th is a day that I will never forget. I walked out of that office at 10 o'clock that morning to drive around the precinct, and the initial call came out, and immediately my stomach dropped when I realized it was a school. When we arrived on scene, officers were beginning to form what we call our entry and contact teams. This was something that I immediately knew, looking up, that officers were doing what they had been trained to do. As we arrived on scene, there was no stimulus that was driving us. However, we were going into the school in multiple different entrances to begin our search for the shooter. As they were doing this, we began to form operational plans outside. I was partnered with my counterpart from the fire department, setting up our ambulances in an effort to, once the shooter was eliminated, we would begin our rescue operations for any victims that were inside. At that time, we began to receive gunfire from a second floor window as officers were inside searching for that individual. Once that individual was neutralized, operations began with our rescue task force operations, as Chief Drake already alluded. This is part of our training that we go through on an annual basis, where we, and along with our fire department personnel, go in and begin setting up rescue corridors so that we can move any type of victims or anyone that needs medical care out from the school and out to our medical professionals to get them to the hospitals. I want to also say I'm very, very proud of the men and women of Midtown Hills Precinct. Majority of our 80-tail personnel that are work patrol responded on this date, along with our community field intelligence team and numerous of other divisions and precincts throughout Davidson County. I will tell you, from witnessing these individuals and several other officers entering into the school, it reminded me of a scripture that said, who shall I send? And it says, send me. And I believe these individuals, along with every Metro Nashville police officer, fire department personnel on that date, answered that call. I also want to say, as Chief Drake's already mentioned, the preparation that the school did that day, the training that they went through, I believe that mirrored with the response from the police department saved countless of lives. I was able to speak to one of the administrators as they were coming out, and she was able to help relay information to teachers and staff members that were still inside, which is a huge help with coordinating communication. Obviously, there's a long road ahead of us. One of the biggest things that Chief Drake's pushed here is wellness, for not only for our officers, but we know there's going to be a long road for the victims that are involved as well. But on that date, all I can say is that they're just very, very proud, very appreciative of the training that we've received. And like I've told many, many people before, you would have never known that Rex wasn't part of the team that went in that day. It was a seamless effort going into the school and doing what they've been trained to do. So from everything from the reunification site, so once you have an incident like that, my primary responsibility was to start setting up staging locations, reunification site, media staging site, because when something like that occurs, there's hundreds of officers that are answering the call to come there. So I just want to say thank you to all the other command staff personnel that responded on that day and assisted with that call for service. But that's a general overview of the response, and I really want to just pass it on to the officers so they can give you a detailed synopsis on what they did that day.
You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Detective
live
Sergeant
press conference
Jeff
coverage
Mathis
going on right now in Nashville.
He's an 11-year veteran of this police department and is currently assigned to the Midtown Hills precinct. Sergeant Mathis and 3 of the detectives from his unit were among the first to enter the Covenant building on the morning of March 27th. Sergeant Mathis will now relate to us what he saw and what he did. Sergeant Jeff Mathis.
Good afternoon. My name is Detective Sergeant Mathis. I am the supervisor of Midtown Hills Community Field Intelligence Team. I'd like to start with my condolences to those families. I will never wear red and black again the same. That's going to be with me forever. My initial response to the incident, we were actually in our office. I was doing some storage organization for our office and different equipments. We at the police department have 1,000 codes, so 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9. Those 1,000 codes indicate usually critical incidents that will require large amounts of response from police, fire, and medical. We received a 9,000 call, which is an active shooter. When the address went out, I knew exactly where it was. Based on my personal life, I do frequent that area. And I've always known that to be the church on the hill as you go up Hillsborough Road. Didn't know the exact address at the time, but now I will know that it's the Covenant School. My response, along with 3 of my detectives, was to run out the door. We donned our vests with ballistic protection and drove to the school. Once arriving at the school, I parked in front. When I got out of my vehicle, I retrieved my department-issued shotgun from the back. And while doing that, I overheard who I now know as Officer Rex Engelbert saying, "I need 3," as you guys have seen on the video. To that point, I had never seen Rex in my life. He is not a man that I've ever seen in a photo or ever met. He's a younger officer with 4 years on. I've been at South Precinct and then Midtown Precinct that I just have never had an instance to know this man. When we got there, unbeknownst to me, he had already unlocked the door. The body cam showed I haven't gotten the name of the gentleman, the administrator that had that key. But I'd like to thank him for what he did. He had your typical janitor's key ring with 1,000 keys to every door, and he had the very specific key to that door for us to go in. Myself, Officer Engelbert, and a Midtown ADTEL officer went through that door. Officer Engelbert opened the door for me. Not knowing what I was walking into, I went through that door with purpose. I knew the gravity of the situation and what had occurred based on the call text, the amount of callers, and it was a serious incident. Like Chief Drake said, our training is to follow stimulus when we enter these buildings for these active shooter situations. At that time, we did not have any. Our training then is to do a systematic room-by-room clearing, which is what myself and Officer Engelbert did. Once we hit the large, I believe it's a welcome center or atrium on the first floor, is when we received stimulus from the shooter. We were still unsure where that was, but our job is to run towards it. So we went through a pair of double doors at that point, unbeknownst to me, because I was focused on those double doors that we went through. Detective Colazo and others had responded and gotten up to us at that point. When we went through the doors, the shots continued. I couldn't tell you how many there were, to be honest with you. We just heard the sounds. From my training and experience, I knew those sounds to be rifle rounds that were being fired based on what it was. We proceeded up the stairs. Once we got to the stairs, we got to a second floor hallway. Once in that hallway, the smell of gunpowder was in the air. It was also very smoky. Obvious that there had been fire in that area very quickly. Doing what our training tells us to do in those situations and following the stimulus, all of us stepped over a victim. I, to this day, don't know how I did that morally, but training is what kicked in. We then proceeded continually to the sounds of gunfire. And then once we got near the shooter and the shooter was neutralized, that's where I'll end my statement at that moment, just because of the ongoing investigation. Afterwards, I do have history in investigations. Knowing the gravity of the situation, it is obviously the best option for us to have a transparent investigation that can be complete and thorough. You can see in the video, I believe I said secondaries and security is what I said. And that security was for that crime scene, based on our duty to do thorough investigations. Also, in active killer scenarios, you never know if there's only one or there's many. So our work is not done at that point. We still have to search for victims and then transition into that rescue task force that we train also. I think that'll be it for me. Thank you, Jay.
You're listening to ongoing coverage of a live press conference from Nashville, Tennessee with the Metro Nashville Police Department. We continue on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
He is assigned to the central or downtown precinct, and as you have seen from his body camera footage, was among the first officers to enter the Covenant building. Officer Rex Engelbert.
I was working in a regular duty capacity that day. I want to start by obviously saying my deepest condolences to the family, the 6 lives lost on the 27th of this month. I'm going to do my best to relay my rendition of my day. It was a regular work day for me. For some reason, I was feeling tired. I'm a proactive unit. I work for the Central B-Detail bike team. I guess I hadn't finished my coffee and I wanted to complete some administrative tasks. So I wanted to go to the Metro Police Academy. I had some business to attend to there. En route there, that put me in the Midtown sector. So I really had no business being where I was. I think you can call it fate or God or whatever you want, but I can't count on both my hands the irregularities that put me in that position when a call for service came out for an act of deadly aggression at a school. I immediately turned on my lights and sirens, knowing the severity of such a call. Like Sergeant said, it demands ample resources in which I was available. Like I said, I was tending to myself. I've been to, I don't know how many false act of deadly aggression calls. Something told me it was time to really get to this one. I treat them all the same, but I was driving as safely as I could get my body there. I don't know the area. I needed to put it in GPS. When I arrived, I don't know the layout of the school. Luckily, due to the bravery of 2 staff members, they stayed on scene. They didn't run, and they gave me concise, clear information for me to use to help anyone in danger. The gentleman gave me, like he said, the exact key I needed to enter the building. It was readily apparent I was going to be the one to make entry, and I've been given my training. I know my role, and I made entry with the personnel I had, and luckily I had some. I saw there were patrol units, and I asked for people to join me as I had a key. I was unaware there were any other access points other than the one I had. As the sergeant said, I did not have stimulus at the time. I was intently listening, so we cleared the hallway we had, room by room, until we made it into the lobby. Like I said, I don't work with anyone that was there that day, so we had to use plain speak to understand each other's roles, what we had to do. When I did hear stimulus, I couldn't get to it fast enough. I just looked for the nearest staircase I could find because I could tell it was above my head. Eventually, following the guidance of other officers, I luckily deployed my rifle. Kept walking towards the gun, the sound of gunfire. There was, like Sergeant said, some smoke in the air. It was very similar to the training we receive, the stress inoculus that our training academy had exposed me to before this incident. I definitely wish I had also deployed my rifle caliber rated heavy plates when I found myself at the front of the stack, where I found the stimulus or the threat, the second floor of the school. Like Sergeant said, work wasn't over. We didn't know if there was another threat. Immediately took teammates I am not used to working with to start clearing rooms, escorting children and teachers along, and there were more personnel and resources at this point. I was able to guide them out, basically similar to the way I had came in, and just tried coordinating best with supervisors and fire personnel until I was relieved of duty on that scene. I was told to sit in my car, and that was pretty difficult because I could tell there was more work to be done. And that's about the day that I had on the 27th.
Thank you, Rex. Detective Mike Colazzo is a 9-year veteran of this police department, and he is assigned to the same unit as Sergeant Mathis. In fact, he works for Sergeant Mathis. Sergeant Mathis is his supervisor. Detective Mike Colazzo.
You're listening to a live press conference from the Nashville Police Department on Super Talk, WWTN, Hendersonville, Nashville.
I want to start with making sure the families know that we're thinking about them. I know a lot of people have reached out to myself, Officer Rex, Sergeant Mathis, our teammates as well. There's been an outpour of support from the community, from other agencies throughout the nation and through the world, and I just want to tell them we greatly appreciate that, but I also hope that that along with all of us, that we remember the victims. And about that day in question, like Sergeant Mathis had stated, we had just started our shift, and we were at the office I was completing some administrative task, sending some emails when the radio was, I believe I had my radio sitting on my desk. One of our partners, Detective Wagner, he sits to the left of me. I believe his radio was there. And we heard the 1,000 code go out of the active shooter, and we heard the dispatch location and that it was in Midtown. Regardless if it was in Midtown or not, like every other officer in our department, we took off running out of the office, plugged in the address on our GPSs, and we took off towards the location. As we were on our way to the school itself, our dispatch was doing a phenomenal job. They were giving us as much updates as they could. They told us that the individual had entered into the school. They were actively shooting, gave us a description, and they were receiving this information from the individuals that were already on scene. When I arrived on scene, another officer had already arrived on scene. To this day, I still don't know who that officer is. There was hundreds of officers that responded. But I've learned that officer had arrived on the other side of the school. I came off of Harding Pike and entered coming up the hill towards the school. When I started to approach, or when I pulled my car up, I observed a female on the cell phone, who later found out was one of the employees of the school. The female was pointing to the left, so I ended up pulling my vehicle towards the left. I ran into another individual, a male that was outside. Rolled my window down, asked where they were. That individual, who I later learned was also an employee of the school, told me that they were around the side, and asked where. And at that point, without hesitation, the employee just took off running towards the door that was later learned to be where the shooter had entered. He took off running and telling me to follow him, which helped out tremendously. So I stayed in my vehicle and drove that direction. He was kind of hugging around the vehicles that were parked on the side because, like they said, we didn't know where the shooter was. He just knew that the shooter had entered into this door right at the entrance. So he said when he got closer to the door, he pointed and told me that they had entered right there. So I ended up parking my vehicle, exiting, and noticed that all the glass to that door had been shot out. Saw shell casings on the ground, bullet holes on the door, so I immediately made entry. As I made entry into the school, I saw an individual that I believe has been identified as the janitor. He was laid out on the ground, not moving. I relayed that information to over our radio to the dispatch that I had made entry and that I had an individual that was down. Still didn't have a stimulus. The shooter wasn't shooting at that point. So started just like Officer Rex, Sergeant Mathis, and every other officer that had gotten there, started clearing rooms as fast as possible, trying to find where the shooter was. I was on the first floor. I had cleared part of the first floor and along with the gymnasium when I had somehow made my way towards a door that led me back outside. That's where I made contact with one of our teammates, Detective Wagner, and two patrol officers. At that point, we were told that the shooter was possibly on the second floor. So at that point, that's when on the body cam you see where we ended up going up the stairwell and made our way to a locked door. At the time, I was upset that we had just hit a locked door, but now, looking back, I'm thankful we hit a locked door because that was the school doing what they've been trained to do. The door was locked, so knowing we didn't have a way of getting in and hearing on the radio that Officer Rex and Sergeant Mathis had a team and that they were making entry, the decision was made that we'd push back out and link back with try to link up with those officers that were making entry on another side. We ended up cutting through the gymnasium that, like I said, we had already previously had gone through. By that point, Detective Plessy had linked up with us along with Detective Cagle, who both are on the same team. When we came in the hallway, that's when you could see down the hallway Sergeant Mathis was standing watching a hallway, and later learned that Officer Rex and some others had gone to the right and were clearing rooms. We ran down that hallway because knowing that they were already ahead of us, it was believed those rooms had been cleared. So we linked up with Sergeant Mathis. I told Sergeant Mathis we were with him, and then we continued systematically clearing the rooms that we came upon. At some point around that time frame is when we started hearing the first shots. Once we started hearing the first shots, that's when everything kind of kicked into overdrive for us. We had gone up the stairwell, made our way down the hallway. That's when I ran into that second victim, laid on the ground. We had to push past the victim because we continued to hear more shots being fired. Like Sergeant Mathis stated, it was very distinctive. You could clear as day tell that there were rifle rounds being fired. We came upon a T intersection. Sergeant Mathis was on one side and I was on the other side. We didn't know if the shooter was to the left or the right. Smoke was everywhere. The fire alarm was going off. It was somewhere right around that point we heard another shot, and so it told us that the shooter was to our right. That's when I made the call and yelled that the shooter was right, and we pushed right and continued down that hallway. Officer Rex had caught up to us. I noticed that Officer Rex had a rifle with a LPVO on it. Not knowing where the shooter was in the distance that we would possibly encounter with the shooter, asked Officer Rex to push forward for us, which he did without hesitation. We continued down that path until we encountered the shooter. Once the situation was ended with the shooter, like Sergeant Mathis and everybody stated, our job wasn't done. We knew that there was victims. We had to pass those victims. So I immediately switched gears, left that scene, and ran the route that we had just taken back outside. Other officers had responded, and they were making entry on different rooms. It had been broadcasted that the shooter had been taken down, and I think it clicked for every officer that was on scene. At that point, it was time to start trying to render aid to the victims and start evacuating the school. So we implemented our rescue task force protocol. I ended up coming out of a separate door that we had not made entry into, linked up with one of the ADTEL supervisors that was outside with Commander, and coordinated with the sergeant on where everything had taken place, and to have officers start responding in with us. I remained there for a while until more officers got on scene. When I felt like enough officers were on scene, Commander had stepped up and advised us to step back and go to our vehicles. That was pretty much, at that point I was done with the scene. I wanted to help. I know Officer Rex wanted to help. I know Sergeant Mathis wanted to help and continue to do what we could, but at that point enough of our co-workers were there, and they were handling it for us. So we were able to step aside. That's when I was able to call my wife and tell her I was okay, advise her of everything, and that, yeah.
I want to add something just really quick. I know you have some questions of these officers. I want to say something. These officers immediately went in, and if you notice, you saw one officer had on a helmet, and that was totally great and the right thing to do. But then you saw other officers who didn't take the time to even put on ballistic helmets. They were so in tune to trying to get in and take this threat down that they didn't think about their own safety. You can see Detective Collazo and Rex and this going on, and it really, in these situations, could have ended really bad for our personnel too. And I just wanted to add that we had so many personnel that was running in that didn't think about ballistic vests, that didn't think about ballistic helmets, They just wanted to save kids. And I just wanted to add that before you ask questions of the officers. I'm incredibly thankful and grateful for their efforts. So.
Thank you, Chief. And
This is Brian Wilson picking up coverage from the Nashville Police Department. You're listening to a press conference from the heroes of March 27th, the officers who entered the school on the day of the Covenant shooting. We continue to listen to this compelling testimony from these officers.
They were the first persons there. With that said, if you have any questions for them, please let me know who the question is for. Jason?
For the responding officers, thank you for telling your narrative and your story of what happened. I think a lot of people, though, watching tonight want to know how you all are doing right now, more than a week later. Are you guys okay?
Okay.
Something I didn't mention earlier is we have had such an outpouring of support from the community, and not only just the Green Hills, Forest Hills area, but from all over. I've received emails from people from outside the country, all over the nation, that is sending support. We've had students from the school that day that have come to the precinct to visit with these officers. We've had church members come and pray over these officers. Our behavioral health staff here has done a phenomenal job with the tasks they've been given. They're completing debriefs for over 150, 200 officers that ultimately responded or was part of the investigation. Part of my role is to make sure the members of my precinct are taken care of, continue to stay on top of them and communicate. I know each one of them has a great support system at home and at work. So I just wanted to add that the community as a whole has been tremendous through this entire ordeal. And I'll let them speak on anything else.
Do one of you want to come up and
just personally curious, just if you guys are all okay?
Yeah, we've had multiple conversations with each other. For the situation, I think everyone is doing well. There's obviously been loss of sleep. Children hugged more than normal. Me personally, I dropped my kid off that morning just like I normally would at daycare. And one of the best things that our behavioral health staff has given me and others is to keep your routine. Don't create any bad habits. Don't get rid of any good habits, or vice versa. So we've struggled for a little bit of relief from the strain that it was caused. Obviously seeing very, very terrible things. But as Commander Wheeler said, we have a good support system, not only with ourselves, but the community as a whole. And a majority of us have personal support systems from either outside family members or churches that have stepped up drastically to reach out.
Mike, Rex, anything to add?
Yeah, for you to take Liza, that was just a look. You said the first thing you did was call your wife and let her know you were safe. What has your family member support been like?
So I can tell you that just like every other officer that was out there, it's not just us. My wife's going through this. My family's going through this. Officer Rex's fiance is going through this. Sergeant Mathis's wife's going through all this, and it's tough. But our department's done a phenomenal job. Our support doesn't just go towards the officers, it goes to the family. So we're working on that, setting up interviews for our family members to go through, talk to counselors, talk to the chaplain, and it helps. A lot of the community that's reached out has actually talked about our families and that they're praying for our families and they're thinking about our families, and it goes a long way for us.
One or two more questions. Here first.
I know that at least one of you is a father, and I'm wondering how you explain to your children not only what happened that day, but also your role that day?
I've got an 11-month-old. Obviously, it's difficult. I will have this conversation with him when he is old enough and ready. The biggest thing that I will instill on him is how proud I am of the actions, not only of other officers, but what I did, not knowingly doing. Our training kicked in. It's what should have happened. It's what happened. As far as having kids, me personally, I took an oath on June 4th of 2012 to serve and protect this community. My family sometimes comes second. It has to. In instances like this, I don't get to stop and say time out and go talk to my wife, talk to my kids. I'm here to make sure everybody else goes home as many can and stabilize the community as best possible.
One more question here.
Did you guys take gunfire when you went to the hallway and then finally saw the shooter? When you heard the shots from the right, were shots coming at you before you fired? And then have you guys, either of you, ever fired your round, your service rifle or your service pistol prior to that?
That's going directly to the officer-involved shooting that they can't address at this point. Okay. I'll take one more. Yes, ma'am.
This is for Chief Drake. And I know you can't talk about the investigation, but because of their training, were they able to avoid wrongdoing?
Yes. Our training is very, we do stress inoculated training. We know exactly what to do, how we're going to clear rooms, how we're going to identify each other, and not to put those protocols out, but you always worry about that. It could happen. But it did not in this instance because of the way we train. CNN.
To the responding officers, Isabel Rosales-San, the question for you guys. Was there ever a moment where the response in Uvalde or the lack thereof ever crossed your mind when you guys were in that building? And was that the lessons learned from Uvalde ever a part of your training that you guys tapped into on that day?
As far as Uvalde goes, that would never cross my mind. That was nowhere near anything in my head or these gentlemen's head at that moment. I've been getting the same training that I deployed since 2012. We are trained to a very high standard. As Chief said, we do stress inoculation, and there's a reason for that, because when we opened that door and the fire alarm was going off, I've been through that. That was something that was already there. I knew what I was capable of doing at that moment. And when we put that training to use, regardless of when it is trained, we get the outcomes that we had.
I was interested in getting any other opinions on that.
You want to ask me, Mike?
Just piggybacking off of Sarge, our training academy has put us through this countless times. We're blessed also to go to outside our department for training. Anytime training pops up, I know everybody's jumping at the bit to go to it, and it played a part in how we responded.
Officer Rex. So these officers didn't have to be here today. They agreed to come and speak with you. They had the choice of whether to do this or not. So I want to thank them all for being here today, for taking this time, and for sharing what Officer Wells said during the bombing was his truth. Thank you for sharing your truth. Thank you all for being here today.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is 21 minutes now past the hour of 3 o'clock. You've been listening for the last few minutes to a press conference, a remarkable press conference from the Nashville Police Department as the officers who responded that day to the Covenant School shooting told their stories. And again, just drives home the point that these are men who have demonstrated remarkable heroism and bravery to go into a building where they were under attack, shots being fired, and took on the shooter and eliminated the shooter in what was a textbook example of police work. So we heard today from Chief John Drake. John Drake. I can't read my own writing. Commander Dayton Wheeler, Sergeant Jeff Mathis, who was one of the leaders there, the bearded individual who was there, one of the first to enter the room, Officer Rex Engelbert, and Officer Mike Colazzo. And we will come back to this story, of course. It is a very busy, extremely busy news day here, not only in Nashville, but also in Washington, D.C., and New York, where we have all kinds of activity. It's going to be a busy day, a day to sit back and absorb a lot of information. Right now, it is 23 minutes now, past the hour, 3 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7.